Hello and welcome to the lesson. The subject is auditing and assurance. In today's lesson, we are going to study how to plan for an audit in a computerized system. Planning an audit in a computerized system, which requires a thoughtful and systematic approach due to the unique complexities and risks that are associated with computerized systems. So we're going to identify some of the key steps that are involved in planning, such as understanding the business and the IT environment. That's the first step, understanding the business and the IT environment. The second step is assessing risks, or what we call risk assessment. The third step is defining audit objectives. Then the audit may be required after defining audit objectives to develop audit strategy and plan. Another step is to communicate with management. At some point, again, the auditor may be required to consider compliance requirements. So those are some of the key steps that we are going to study in our today's lesson. And therefore, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to analyze the key steps involved in planning for audits in a computerized environment. So the first step, as I mentioned, is understanding the business and the IT environment. Understanding the business and the IT environment. When or if you are called upon to audit a computerized system, and a computerized accounting system, number one, you need to understand that business. Understand the business, understand the company, all right? Identify the critical systems, understand the data flows, understand the dependencies between the different systems. That is part of understanding the business. Then you may also need to assess the information technology infrastructure. Understand the hardware, the software, the network configurations, understand the security measures that are put in place, and so on. In understanding also the business, may be required to evaluate the IT controls, and you understand the IT controls or evaluate the IT controls by reviewing existing IT general and application controls like the access controls, change management controls, the data backup procedures. That can help you to identify the potential strengths and weaknesses in the system. You understand? Understanding the business and the information technology environment. Gaining a comprehensive understanding of the organization's processes. Okay, understanding one, organization's processes. First of all, understand the organization's processes, the data flows, the dependencies, system, all that. Then I assess the IT infrastructure. Assess the IT infrastructure. That will help you understand the IT environment. You understand the IT environment, but first of all, assessing the IT infrastructure. The hardware, the software, the networks, and all that. Security measures, and everything. Then evaluate IT controls. IT controls. Evaluate the IT controls. There is a lesson in which we identified the types of controls in a computerized system. So all those controls that we mentioned, starting from the administrative controls and so on, the auditor has to evaluate the controls. And in evaluating the controls, the auditor may understand the IT environment. The second step is risk assessment. When called upon to audit a computerized system, the second stage is to assess risks, identify and assess IT risks. Identify and assess IT risks. Identify and assess the information technology risks. Analyze the risks specific to computerized environment, such as unauthorized access, such as data breaches, such as system failures, such as fraud, and then consider both the internal and the external threats. That is how to identify and assess IT risks. Then prioritize risks. Prioritize risks. After identifying and assessing the risks, prioritize the risks. Prioritize. Rank the identified risks based on the most critical areas. Ranking of risks is what we are referring to as prioritizing risks. That is what should be done when assessing risks. First, identify and assess the IT risks, then rank the identified risks based on their likelihood and potential impact on the organization. Because when that happens, then it will help to focus audit strategy on the most critical areas, Three, define audit objectives. Define audit objectives. When planning the audit in a computerized environment, the third step is to define audit objectives. Define audit objectives. And you define audit objectives by determining the scope of the audit. You first of all determine the scope of the audit. The first step in defining audit objectives is to first determine the scope of what is the scope of the audit. What is the scope of the audit? What is the scope of the audit? Clearly define what areas, what systems, and processes will be included in the audit. That is determining the scope of the audit. You understand? Then, having defined the scope of the audit, then you can set specific audit objectives. Set specific audit objectives. Set specific audit objectives. Outline the goals and the desired outcomes of the audit, which may include verifying the accuracy of financial data, which may include assessing the effectiveness of IT controls, or even ensuring compliance with regulations. Set the specific audit objectives. Then one can now develop the audit strategy. Develop audit strategy is part of defining audit objectives. Develop an audit strategy and plan. Okay? That should be step number 4. Okay? Developing an audit strategy, step number 4, and plan. You understand? After defining the audit objective, then based on the defined audit objective, then the auditor can develop audit strategy and plan. Develop audit strategy and audit plan is the 4th step in planning the audit in a computerized environment, developing an audit strategy and audit plan. And that can be done by selecting, first of all, selecting audit procedures. Select audit procedures. Select audit procedures. That means choose appropriate audit techniques. Choose appropriate audit tools, such as the computer-assisted audit techniques, like test data, interviews, also things like documentation review, and so on. Select audit procedures. Then after selecting audit procedures and techniques, then the auditor should allocate resources. Allocate resources. Assign staff with the necessary IT expertise and experience to conduct the audit. Assign. This is just at the planning. Assign. These tasks will be handled by, because there is the audit plan. We have the objectives have been set. The scope has been determined. We know which areas will be audited. If it is compliance audit, check which staff will be allocated and what are the resources that will be required. Then, of course, establish timelines. Establishing of timelines. And you can see, candidates, this planning of the audit in a computerized system is not different from the manual audits. It's only that this one is specific to computerized system. It is obvious after developing an audit strategy, what happens? The objectives may be the same, but it's only that the tools are different. You understand? So establishing timelines is necessary both when auditing computerized environment, computerized system, or even the manual system. Establishing a timeline, that it means creating a detailed audit plan with specific tasks and deadlines and responsible parties. Then step number 5 is to communicate with management. Communicate with management. Communicate with management. It is important for the auditor to communicate the plan with management. You understand? First of all, by discussing the audit scope and objectives. Discuss audit. The auditor should discuss the audit scope with management. This is not just the scope, but also objectives. The discussion between the auditor and management in relation to audit scope and objectives is very important, because it ensures that management understands the purpose and the focus of the audit. Because candidates, the management will be required to provide information that is to be audited. So the auditor has to communicate so that the management knows exactly what the auditor requires. There is also the bit on requesting for management representations. Obtain management representations. Obtain management representations. The auditor should seek written confirmation from management regarding the completeness and accuracy of information provided. Right? He may also be required to coordinate with the IT personnel. Coordinate with IT personnel is an important stage where the auditor is required to coordinate with the information technology personnel, should collaborate with IT staff to gain access to systems, data, and documentation, because these records are maintained by management. So the auditor, first of all, has to communicate with management and this is the IT personnel of the company that is auditing. That collaboration is very necessary. You understand? The sixth step in planning the audit in a computerized environment is to consider regulatory and compliance requirements. Consider regulatory and compliance requirements. The auditor should consider regulatory and compliance requirements, like identifying applicable laws, identify applicable laws and regulations. The auditor may be required to identify the applicable laws and regulations to the company that he is auditing. Ensure the audit complies with, so that he can ensure the audit complies with the relevant industry standards, it complies with data privacy laws, and also other legal requirements. He may also be required to assess compliance risks. That is part of the auditor's work. Assess compliance risks by evaluating the organization's compliance with the legal requirements, and also to identify potential areas of non-compliance. Then lastly, there is the bit on adaptability and flexibility. Flexibility and adaptability. What does that mean? That means that the auditor should be prepared for unexpected findings. Should be prepared for unexpected findings. The auditor ought to be prepared for unexpected findings. As much as he has a plan, there could be other aspects that may come up which he may not have anticipated, which may need to be adapted in the audit plan. Audit plans may need to be adjusted based on new information and discoveries during the audit process. So, and therefore, the auditor has to be prepared for such unexpected findings. Then he ought to maintain flexibility. Maintain flexibility. The auditor, as much as has a plan, is required to maintain flexibility. He should be open to adapting audit procedures as needed to address emerging risks or even changing circumstances. So these are steps which are very key, and by following these steps and considering the unique aspects of a computerized environment, auditors can effectively plan and execute their audits that provide valuable insights into an organization's IT controls, risks, and compliance. That is the end of the lesson on planning the audit in a computerized environment. Assignment. What are the key factors that auditors should consider when planning an audit in a computerized system environment? Number 2, how does the planning process for an audit in a computerized system differ from that in a manual system? 3, explain the role of risk assessment in planning an audit in a computerized environment and how it influences the audit strategy. 4, how can auditors leverage the understanding of the computerized system and its controls to develop an effective audit plan? Then lastly, number 5, what are the specific audit procedures that auditors should consider when planning an audit in a computerized system to address the unique risks associated with such systems? In our next lesson, we're going to analyze audit approaches, which are auditing around, auditing with, and through the computer. Bye.